I know, right? It's been forever.
Get this august group of folks on it. Put this down a little bit. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for those in the audience for being here. Let me kick off the meeting with the purpose statement for the Citizens Advisory Committee. The primary this has been retyped. Way to go, Rick. The primary objective of the CAC is to ensure capital maintenance and public transportation projects and programs approved by the voters at the November 2nd, 2004, November 6, 2012, and November 7th, 2017 ballot measures are accomplished with PPRTA funds. The committee reports directly to the Board of Directors. And that November 17th was the addition of the gap funding issue. So, all right. So we have a quorum right now of our alternates. Tom Rogers, you're the only one. You're the only one that can vote right now. So, should we get to that individual counting? Ed, David, and Carlos, if we have to take a roll call, our hand thing. So, guys, just so you know. Do I hear a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Tom, move. You second, Reb?
That's fine.
Second, Reb. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Any public comments by members of the committee for items not on the agenda? Ma'am?
You gonna do the public or the committee?
No, I'm going to do everybody, but I just thought I'd ask the committee first. So, no public comment. Anybody in the audience who would like to comment on an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you. Do I hear a motion for approval of minutes for the August 1st, 2018 regular meeting?
So moved.
Tony, somebody second. Joan? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, very good. And Ms. Bev, you're up.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So for June, we received $9,481,000, so we were $398,000 above the monthly budget. We had the Senior Open and the Warrior Games that month that we didn't have the prior year, so that probably easily accounted for that. And we'll see if July, if we get any bump, we should have some from new car sales related to the storms.
hail
Yeah.
damage, yeah.
So as far as that goes, hope to see some increases. And then compared to last year, we were $475,000 above June actual last year. So that's good, but it's not as much as we were hoping for.
For
so.
sure.
Does anybody have any questions on the rest of the financials?
Tony?
Can I just ask a question on that last comment of not as much as we were hoping for?
Yeah.
It's a 5% increase. How is that not as much as we were hoping for?
Well, because we are hoping for more for the I-25 gap funding.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
So, a little pressure.
So, if we get it, we get it.
Yeah, we get it.
I mean,
we get
it sounds good. I know what you mean. You really should budget for exactly what you think you're going to get.
Right.
But,
Us budgeteers budget conservatively
yeah, so anyway.
and
Okay.
spend wisely. Okay, any questions for Bev? Second item under financial is the 2019 budget calendar.
Right, and this calendar looks very similar to last year, and it meets all the requirements of the state of Colorado for government entities. It's on the opposite side of the memo, and I just need approval of the budget calendar, and then it goes to the board.
We have a move to approve, Reb.
Second.
Tony, a second. Any discussion, Joan? Oh, okay. For the new member, let's take a vote. All those in favor of approving this budget calendar, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Just for the new members, this just lays out the sequence of events for formulation of the 2019 budget. It has to be, the board has to go into an open session or to a workshop type, an open session for this thing, and then they close out of it. So this just sets the sequence of events that's required by the state as a public government organization to report to that. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Beth. 2018 capital maintenance and public transportation projects, City of Colorado Springs. Mike, are you going to have the honors?
Yes. Good afternoon, Mike Chavez, City Engineering. Got several contracts to go over. The first one is another change order to the bike lane cascade widening project. It's for more asphalt work. We've been just kind of adding a little bit as we have money to stretch that. So this is a change order to Martin Marietta for $17,000 for some more paving work on that project.
Mike, I'm not going to argue the amount, I just got a question. So this is from Fillmore North
Yes.
to right there at Winters near the dog park, right? Just beyond that is the Templeton Gap Trail. And this is adding bike paths. That one block, that one block that's left between Winters and the drainage canal and the Cottonwood Trail, is there a reason why we're stopping at Winters?
Funding.
Okay, all right. Answers, thank you.
The next one is a kind of a correction for the Woodman Road corridor. And in my memo, we had originally planned on paying the construction contract for Wildcat. We were going to use $2 million from CSU's reimbursement that they owed us. But in order to keep the funding a little more clear within our accounting system, we decided to, and also the federal grant brought in some more money. So rather than have three pots of money, we decided to fund the construction contract out of just RTA and the grant. And so in my second page of my memo, we increased the grant to $20 million and RTA to $20 million, the grant to $10 million. We never came back to the board to correct that. So this memo is just basically asking the board approval to increase the RTA share of the construction contract by $1.1 million, and the $2 million that we're going to pay out of the CSU funds we've used to pay construction management and right-of-way costs. So it's just kind of a cleanup.
Okay, Tom.
So this looks like it's just more of an accounting change,
Yes.
right? It's not actually a change in the amount of money that's being spent. It's just how it's being.
Yeah, we never got approval for the full 20 million of RTA. We got it for 19,669.
But the $2 million from CSU still came. It was just used a little differently.
Yeah, to pay.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mike on that one? Okay.
You're asking for an increase to 1.14 million, but yet on the front page, you're showing the PPRTA contribution at 19, it's rounded up, 19.7. 19.7 plus 1.4 takes us over 20 million.
Uh,
Certainly, I understand the difference.
Well, we were asking 20,809,826.
It's on the,
Further page over.
it's back page, the top.
The second page, yeah.
So we're just changing the total project cost line to show the two sources versus three as an accounting correction. Right,
Well,
Mike?
but the
Yes.
1.4 million still takes the original amount over, but, okay, so you're asking,
1.14.
No additional funds, just how it's accounted for in the records.
well, I understand that, but I'm looking at the original amount approved of 19,669 plus a few more, and you add 1.14 million onto it, and you're now up at 21. And the numbers don't track.
Is
That
there,
does. Adds up exactly.
let me check that real quick, but we'll, should add.
Well, when I take 19.6 and add 1,400,000 onto it, I get this sort of,
1.14, not 1.114.
I'm sorry, I transposed. Thank you.
Okay. No, yeah, okay, we're good.
All right, we're
All
good.
right. All right, and, okay, the next contract is a change order. We're just kind of using up the remaining pedestrian improvement sidewalk improvements to even Pricer, so we kind of held some money back in case we needed in other areas, but we're going to use the rest of that money up, so we're adding $170,000 to that contract, and that'll finish up the money that we have available this year. Next one, okay. So the next one, the Pikes Peak Greenway. First of all, on your front cover sheet, the little table, I have a number of 1,139,000 and change. We're going to change that. So the number that we're going to be talking about is $1,133,496.27. And we will have a corrected version for the board. So what we, yes, we found an invoice that. So what we're doing is, originally, back in 16, the board approved using up to $3.5 million of the Greenway Fund for the bridge project. And we actually have bids in for the bridge project right now. We're kind of looking at that, so we don't have an exact number, but what we're seeking today and next week from the board is authority to use the remaining money of that $3.5 million, which is the $1,133,496.
So this is final request.
Well, we haven't requested more money. We've been requesting using parts of it.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
This totals 3.5.
Yes, but I've got a caveat. We were going to award the contract the next week or two, and then next month we'll come to the board, to the CACN board, with a more of an informational memo stating exactly how much of this $1 million we're going to use for the construction contract. We may come with it and obligate it all to the construction contract, or we may come back and have only maybe obligated or ask maybe to use, or not asking, but we'll have decided to use maybe only $800,000 of it for the construction of the bridge, and whatever the difference of balance is between that and the $1.1 million, we'll save to pay for some railroad costs, railroad flagging, or a railroad aerial easement. We're not sure about that. But next month, the board, you and the board will know exactly how much of this is going to construction contract, and then any remainder, we will come with, to get authorization to pay the railroad, whatever we come up in agreement. So we'll come back either way with either an informational item for the bridge or an actual agreement or contract with the railroad to pay for their costs.
So you just want to use your 3.5 caps in order to to award your contract.
Yes.
Or to advertise and award your contract, then you'll adjust what you're going to use after you get those bids.
Yes. But we don't want to, Rick asked me, well, can you just wait till next month? But we'd like to get going, so we'd like to actually process and award the contract between now and next month and start executing, and we'll just come back and let you know how much really went to the bridge. But overall, we're still going to stay under that $3.5 million for all bridge expenses.
Yes, ma'am, Cheryl.
Mike, on the back of that. Yeah, you go. On the back, it shows a budget of $4.6 million, however.
Well, that's how much money's in the Greenway Fund total. That
Oh, from
includes park
two
and-
projects.
No, the Greenway funding is one pot of money. Out of that, the board has agreed to allow $3.5 million to go to the bridge project. But Park and Rec has the Uinta undercrossing. That's the same budget. So that's why there's more money in there.
There are other bikeway projects in that
Yeah.
pot. 3.5 is allocated to the bridge.
And Rick is keeping very, very exact count of that $3.5 million.
Rick?
If I could have just a minute to restate what Mike just said. First of all, I handed out at your places the minutes from July of 2016, 25 months ago. There's probably 6 or 8 CAC members who have come on board since then. So just for your education, if you look at the bottom of page 2, the yellow highlighting, that was the board action that set the $3.5 million cap on the PED Bridge. Now, the America the Beautiful Park PED Bridge is a subcomponent of the named capital project Pikes Peak Greenway Corridor. So Bev and I are tracking the expenditures in this subcomponent, a $3.5 million cap within a larger capital project, Pikes Peak Greenway Corridor. So just to let you know, we're tracking that to make sure that the city doesn't exceed the 3.5 for the bridge out of PPRTA funds. Now, they have other sources, and the bridge is probably 10, 11, 12 million, or Mike, you might know, but the PPRTA share, according to the board, is only going to be, at the current time, is only going to be 3.5 million. The second issue is that Mike wants to apply this month every last dollar within the cap of the 3.5, which is this $1,133,000, towards the construction of the PED Bridge. But he doesn't know what that contract is going to be, and he has currently unfunded and unknown expenditures for the railroad, because, as everybody knows, the railroad, if you build a bridge over their tracks, you're going to pay them to monitor your construction of your bridge over their tracks. So an email from the city estimated that was going to be about $280,000, an email we received last December. So Mike wants to sharpen his pencil and see if that 280 is still a good number. And then he'll come back next month and either move 280 or 2 something over to the railroad, or he'll leave all the $1,133,000 in the construction contract, and he'll have to find some other money, non-RTA, to pay for the railroad costs that they will charge him to monitor his construction of his bridge over their tracks. Is everybody clear?
Those flaggers ain't cheap either. That little guy sitting in his truck all day long and $40,000 an hour or something like that.
So Mike I just gave the same presentation Mike did. Any questions? Thank you.
Okay.
There is actually a third option, but we're not going to go there.
Carlos?
Yes, Chair, a question. It wasn't clear why this needs to be expedited, and that there's no vendor on this. It seems unusual to be pre-approving a contract without a vendor, apparently needs to be expedited. Explain again why it needs to be done this month rather than next month?
Well, one, we're not actually approving the vendor. I'm just asking getting authorization to spend the money, and we have done that before. We just want to try to get this project going as quickly as possible, and awarding a contract takes a couple of weeks. So if we waited till next month, the second week of October to get authorization, then we start the paperwork. There's 2 weeks later, so you're talking almost 2 months delay.
I understand
Yeah,
there's
so-
a delay, but it needs to be expedited. It's a different question. It needs to be done now.
Yeah, it would help us get things done quicker.
You want to get it done quicker.
And like I
so
said,
that's the
we'll have the
motivation.
actual number as an information for you next month.
The memo says that the contract's going to come back before the CAC and board. Is that?
Well, it'll
correct?
be more of it'll be for approval, but we just want it's kind of more of an informational.
An informational approval?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure I understand that, but I'll just leave it at that.
We normally don't start executing a contract until we get approval from the board, but in this case, we'd like permission beforehand, so that,
Just to use the cap, use up to the cap, is I guess the question here.
Mike, my question is, originally, obviously, there were estimates done on this bridge. From what we already know on design cost, how did that fare against the estimate that we originally had for design cost?
I didn't talk to Ryan about that, but I think it's kind of in line. It was, I think the design was $1 million something. I think it was about $1.4 million, yeah. It was about
Well,
10. It was within the kind of the
I mean,
range that we typically
We
expect.
haven't bought anything except design so far, and you're asking for the final part of the $3.5 million. So $1 million of this is going to go for whatever at this point, but you've already then spent $2 million, and that must have all gone to design.
Well, design, survey.
Didn't you spend an initial segment that was the abutment that was tied to the corner?
Oh, yeah,
of the mu-
$300,000 we
So they
paid to.
spent something because the abutment was an integral part of the foundation of the museum, so they used a portion of the bridge fund for that additional segment of that,
Yeah,
as it
$310,000.
adjoins the museum or something,
Yes,
so.
I think it would be valuable if we would see, next month, you're going to have a contract award to see, compared to the original estimates, how are we falling against our estimates in reality? What did we figure construction was going to cost? What is it really going to cost now that you have a contract?
Okay, well, we can,
What is 2 years cost us?
we can bring that.
Mr. Godfrey?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's Carlos Sienna. I just want to say, at the January meeting, the amount was $10.6 million that was the estimate presented at the January meeting. That was just informational.
Okay, well, we'll bring that to the board.
This, for the newer members of the CAC, this project has a very long and storied past, and it scraped new wounds for a lot of us, so we can talk to you offline about that one, but
Yeah, I tell you.
anyway. Hey, Brian.
We big guys taking up too much space.
We're further away from the crowd. All right, Mike.
Yeah, okay. All right, then the last item is a construction contract for some landscape improvements to the Fontanero El Paso intersection. A couple years ago, we closed off one of the legs of that five-legged intersection to help with congestion, mainly. And there was a median island that was used to close off that east leg of Fontanero. And we didn't finish it. I mean, we got the concrete in, but we didn't do any of the landscaping because we were working with the neighborhood. They had a desire to landscape it, and but we told them if we did that, they'd have to maintain it. So we kind of worked through an agreement with them to maintain it. So we came to an agreement with them, and we put this out to bid for the landscaping, and we had two bids there, one for The low bid was 56,000, the other one was 88. So this is to kind of finish out that project.
You ask that every time. Rick?
Make a motion to approve all five.
We have a motion, we have a motion and a second to approve all five as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, the next item. City, oh, you want to address the line item transfer, Mike?
Is that the next one?
Yes, sir.
Oh, there it is. Okay, it's hidden. It's just a one-pager. Okay. Yes, so we have another project we'd like to start. It's an A-list project. It's improvements to Barnes Road between Solar Ridge and Powers. That's where the new Sprouts Market and a bunch of stuff is going in. 2C is going to be in there paving Barnes up to that area. So what we want to do is move this project up and try to get those improvements in and kind of work it in and coordinate with 2C. So we're asking for $200,000 to be transferred from Centennial, which we are closing out, into the Barnes project, so we can get going on the design.
Yeah, they've already done the utility and paving at the top of that hill going back down towards the school. So this is that last section over to Powers.
Yes.
Any, Joan?
Just move recommendation as presented.
Rev's got a question?
Yes, how are you coordinating? Because the understanding was there was no overlap between PPRTA and 2C, so how do you know the $200,000 isn't doing part of 2C or 2C is doing part of PPRTA?
Well,
I don't doubt that it's on the ballot. I couldn't. But it was not budgeted. No money was budgeted for it this year.
Well, what we'll try to do is to get the improvements done and have 2C do the final lift, so it would save us some money.
You just got some drainage stuff in there too, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, there's curb and gutter sidewalks, so that was the bulk of the
Coming
project.
out of that new construction. Just
So what'll
on the north
happen
side
is
of the hill.
if we can get what would normally happen is if 2C wasn't here or wasn't nearby, we would make the improvements, the curb and gutter, widen the road and patch where we widened and pave the turn lanes and the widening, and the rest of the street would be left unimproved, because we usually don't have enough money to overlay an entire street. So this way, if we get the improvements done, we'll patch it, and then the whole intersection, the whole width of the street will be overlaid instead of just a portion of it. So that's where the coordination comes in. So we want to get the curb and hardscape stuff done before 2C so they can overlay the road.
Most of that improvement's on the north side of that too, right? Because that Sprouts area and that intersection on that new road improved and turn lanes and stuff on the
Somewhat,
south
yeah.
side of that, right? Yeah. Okay.
So that's where the coordination comes in. So we can leave the project completely done instead of, half paved and half with the old pavement.
Yeah, that cut out there for what Stage Coach, comes in there.
Yeah.
That's that one road that comes in.
That's Solar
Ridge.
That's that Solar Ridge Road.
I thought the one halfway down the hill is so dangerous pulling in and out.
That's Chaparral.
Yeah,
Chaparral.
Chaparral. Yeah.
I believe that's signalized though, isn't it?
Now.
It's not?
No.
Okay.
Part now.
So that's where the coordination
Okay.
comes in.
So we have a motion, I'm sorry, Tom, you want to have a question?
The 200,000 from Centennial, that's just because that's out in the future.
We came in about 400,000 under the total project budget, so we're using some of that money, and then we'll close out the rest and move it.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Tony for second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? All I can say, Mike's about time.
All right, thank you.
All right. So our 2018 capital maintenance for El Paso County project line item transfer, Ms. Jennifer.
Afternoon, Mr. Chair, Jennifer Irvin, and Commission, Jennifer Irvin, County Engineer. And I guess I would request, can we hear C and D together, because they're really interrelated? And I'll talk about D first. We're coming to you today for approval of several contracts all related to Monument Hill Road. And the first contract is our amendment number 3 for our design contract, and this for approximately $50,000. And that's for AECom, and that's for essentially support through construction. And we would only spend what we need to if we have design RFIs or any changes that we need to address during construction. And then our construction contract award with Schmidt Construction for about $3.6 million. And this is for actually doing the construction on the project. And then thirdly, our contract award for Yeh and Association, and this is for the construction management and all the inspections and testing and oversight of the contractor. And then just to kind of go back to the line item transfer, our original program budget that we estimated for this project when we started looking at this overall project with the ballot measure was about $3.965 million. We have essentially totally to date budgeted in this project about $4.4 million. And what I'm asking for today is transfer in approximately $750,000. We're taking that from Eastonville Road. That project has not yet started, and that's fully budgeted, and so I feel comfortable that we're not impacting the schedule of that project at all. And we'll be replacing those dollars probably with next year's budget. But essentially, we're asking for that line item transfer. The project is about $1 million above what we had originally expected, $1.2 million. We have in there kind of a balance that we would leave in the project based upon all the contracts that we have previously approved, and then these that are pending in front of you today of about $250,000. So if we have any additional money outside of the force account that we've included in the project, we would be coming back to you. But essentially, just wanted to kind of go over the project. This project, as you know, Monument Hill Road is a roadway that we received from CDOT in the 2004 conveyance of different roads between the city and county and CDOT when we did a bunch of the switches between powers. And we knew coming into that roadway that we'd have some improvements. Good news is that some of the improvements will be done by others along that stretch. So we are not doing, originally we had all the way from Woodmore to County Line Road. We originally had that identified. There still may be some additional improvements at some future date that we may come back and consider. But I think that this is the area that we have the highest accidents and the biggest issues as far as safety. And essentially, those other pieces will leave till future dates, or in the case of the area north of Misty Acres Boulevard, if you look at your map, that area is actually going to be realigned, and so with future development. So at this point, we're not doing improvements. And then there's an area just in that area of Misty Acres where it intersects, that there's going to be some reconfiguration and a crossing that CDOT will be installing for wildlife crossing in conjunction with the I-25 gap. So at this point, what we're trying to do is do essentially a first phase of the project, and I'm hoping that this actually will be pretty much the last phase that PPRTA funds, one, just because of the developer realignment of the road, and because of that, we don't want to put a lot of money and effort into the northern part and then also the CDOT portion as it relates to their work. So we may at some point come back later in the program to do additional improvements on Monument Hill Road, but we want to see what extent CDOT will be doing before we put PPRTA money into something that will be ripped out. But we feel confident that the southern portion is something that that is going to stay and we can go ahead and do and not be impacted based upon CDOT's 30% design plans that they have in place already for the GAP project. And these are areas that we've already been working on. So,
Tom, you got a question?
I do. Jennifer, how long do you think this project will take?
This project probably, I before the meeting, I didn't look at the construction schedule. I can come back with you, but I think it's probably going to last through the end of next year, but I could come back with an actual schedule based upon the contract.
The reason I asked the question is because $300,000 to $30,000 of construction management for a 1-mile, 2-lane road seems high. I mean, I don't know how many people they plan to have watching this, but that seems like a lot of cash.
So what I would say is that typically that's about 10 to 12% of your construction costs, so I feel like it's pretty much in line. What we have here is not just roadway. We also have a box culvert here at this location, a lot of utility relocation, and then we also have a lot of coordination with because we have a school, a lot of PIO in coordination with traffic management. A lot of the costs that we see a lot on our construction is erosion control and keeping in coordination with our MS4 permits and programs. And so, unfortunately, you see, we used to estimate, 8 to 10% of construction management, and now, probably over the past 8 to 10 years, we've seen those costs rising. That erosion control, that stormwater requirements that we do have to do require daily inspections, and it's a lot of work on top of your regular construction management that we have to have on site. So it's the cost of doing business.
Larry had a question, then Reb.
Jennifer, in your statement, you said that the Eastonville Road project was fully funded. Even though it hasn't started, you're taking $750,000 out of that particular budget. What type of time frame do you have as far as actually getting that design started, and will this actually delay that design start?
It won't delay the design start. Part of the reason why I feel comfortable with that is that, we have plenty of money to fund the design. Secondly, I've been working with the developer out there, Meridian Ranch. If you're familiar with that, they have some impacts. One of the things we've been working on is an agreement where they do the initial design on Eastonville Road with our oversight, of course, because they have some additional improvements out at that location that they're responsible for as well. So rather than duplicating some of those efforts, what I'm working with them on and have worked with them on is an agreement where they essentially front the design. And so we're not having to, they have a turn lane that they have to complete out there. I don't want to have them put out in that turn lane and then rip it out almost immediately, and then have them just design the turn lane without all the full complement of all the other things that we have to do there. So I think what they're going to be doing starting this fall, the county is going to provide them survey data, and I believe that Meridian Ranch is going to get underway as soon as we provide that with the design for Eastonville Road all the way from essentially Stapleton up north. So by the time we need this money, I anticipate putting that back in the budget with this year's budget, and that money will be back in place.
Well, I know you've talked before about, coordinating with Meridian Ranch as far as the design and that goes, but also at the El Paso County CAC meetings, the last couple meetings, comments have come up as far as maintaining Eastonville Road. The traffic is drastically increased, as you know, on that road. And, some of the supervisors are saying that they go out there and grade the road. By the next day, you can't even tell it's been done. So my question is, can this be moved along a little bit faster and to get the project going, and then hopefully catch that $750,000 later in the project when you really need it, but, get the project going. And I know Meridian Ranch, well, I've had some dealings with Meridian Ranch, and they're almost as bad as the railroad is. I don't know whether you agree with that or not, but.
Actually, we've had some of the other developments in that area that have been more challenging. Meridian Ranch is actually the developer who's been out in the Falcon area doing roadway improvements before they're even necessary. So I'm not sure what your dealings with have been with Meridian Ranch, but I think we feel like we have a good relationship with them. And actually, the cost of the design is well in excess of the cost of them putting in the turn lane that they have to do. So the area that we have, the first phase that we're going to do plan for construction for Eastonville is Stapleton North to Londonderry, and I think we chip sealed that a few years ago in anticipation of trying to keep it held up better than, just because we were having a hard time maintaining a gravel road. The traffic was so excessive. So that was done, and I do want to make sure that we get that going. And so really the limiting factor, as it has been, is the county providing the survey to Meridian Ranch, and that's a value of about $50,000. We've been pulled off to trying to do some emergency projects. But once we are able to get those underway, I anticipate we'll be able to get our surveyors back out there and get the information. So it's not Meridian Ranch that's really holding it up. It's the county. And so I feel like we're going to get out there. Again, that budget for the Eastonville is like I don't have it. Hold on.
Yeah, it's about $8.2 million.
It's about and that money is there, so $750,000 isn't holding up the project at all. It's really, we need to get our surveyors out and get it done. It's only going to be a month or so that's a little bit further back, so I feel like, that's a cost that the county, I would rather bear with our county staff than, use up PPRTA money to do it, if that's something we can do.
Well, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
Is that, if we can have Meridian Ranch do the actual design, it'll also be better coordination that way between Meridian Ranch and, the county on getting that done. Like I say, I'm just concerned about the traffic increase on that road. And like I say, they can go out there and grade that one day, and the next day it's, as bad as it was before they even graded it.
Sure, and the other thing that we're doing outside of PPRTA, but we're looking at how we do gravel roads. That's something that Jim, Scott, and I, Jim Reed, the Director of Public Works, and Scott Cuthbertson, Deputy Director, and myself, we've been looking at as far as doing something different for gravel roads. We've been doing the same thing for the past 20 or 30 years, and we have some improvements that we are hoping, and some equipment that we are hoping to do. Instead of just simply grading, doing reclaiming on gravel roads, we are working towards that, but still putting together the information. So I'm hopeful that outside of PPRTA that we're looking at some different things rather than just doing the maintenance grading, so that we can address some of those grading issues on those high traffic roads. And that's primarily why we have Eastonville Road in the PPRTA, is because it's not able to handle the traffic that is on that roadway at this point.
Jennifer, you got a question, Brett? Go ahead.
Jennifer, on the first item 6A, you did, I'm sorry, on 6C, and you did 6D first, which is fine. Top of the second page, it says the right-of-way easements and purchase were 2016, July and October. Then you've got them down below, reporting items for property purchase, February and March this year. At my extended lifespan, my memory isn't good. So, did you report property in March 18 here?
So what it says is that we did a contract amendment for additional money for design and property acquisition in July 2016 and October 2016. And then we subsequently purchased right-of-way and easements, and we've been reporting those as we go along. One of the things that's held us up, we had two things. I mean, we've had this project ready. We had a transfer of right-of-way between CDOT and the county for the intersection, down at the intersection, because we're doing a free right at that intersection, and part of that got into CDOT right-of-way, and it's not just CDOT right-of-way, a state highway, but CDOT highway, federal highway, so we had to go through a process in order to be able to acquire the property to be able to do that project. And then secondly, we have a large box culvert there near the way station, and that took some time to get the approval for that and approval for the Clomer to be able to go ahead and do the project. And rather than, we wanted to have everything in place because we do have a school that we're impacting here. Rather than go ahead and awarding the contract and hoping that that would be in place, I wanted to make sure that we had all the property in place before we started, because I didn't want to be held up and impact the school more than we had to.
Like West Colorado.
Actually, it's two schools, the elementary school.
Yes, you're right.
Jennifer, my question is, so this is really about half of that total stretch that we're dealing with. And you talked about a realignment. That new subdivision back behind the school, I guess is that the Misty Acres neighborhood back there?
Mm-hmm.
Did I hear you correctly that there's consideration of realignment of this Monument Hill Road that would take it back through that neighborhood? Because it seems like up around the top of the hill, just south of county line, there was a discussion a year or two ago about a realignment and developing an entranceway or a connection on the county line. Is that still kind of what they're thinking?
Yeah, so we have Misty Acres Boulevard, and you can see on that map how it kind of dead ends.
Right.
And there's been several concepts about how that was going to be completed, because you have Monument Hill Road, and then you have Misty Acres Boulevard, and so if you have them both connect into County Line Road, they're going to be very close.
Right.
And it's already very close to, I think it's Dillwood, the other roadway that goes south, so you'd have three roadways right in a row off that interstate, so we didn't want to do that. But the developers had several concepts, and so essentially it's going to, Monument Hill Road is going to tie into Misty Acres Boulevard. It's a matter of how that looks and what that looks like. So, Monument Hill Road is a very important road, and what I don't want to do is spend a bunch of money on that, because it really is the developer who's going to be realigning that roadway. So that's why we've held off on that northern portion and decided not to do that.
Hope all those neighbors know the school kids are coming.
Yeah. And the primary issues that we've had, we've done studies on this roadway, significant. We have had some issues up at the intersection of County Line Road. I think, but the primary issues and the majority of the fatalities that have happened have been down at Woodmore, and that's where all the school kids drive south as well from the high school for the most part. So I think that we are taking care of 90% of the significant issues on that roadway. Not to say that the other portion of the north doesn't need improved, but I feel like it's within a timeline that is reasonable for us to leave that off.
Okay. Mr. Brian, first.
Jennifer, you mentioned a little bit back in the discussion the stormwater MS4 permits. Just for informational purposes, my understanding was the NPDES was making that an easier, less burdensome process. Is that not the case?
I think it depends on how you look at it. I think the state is making their oversight on us a little bit less burdensome.
Okay.
But the bottom line is that, the amount of paperwork, the amount of site visits, the amount of work that we have to do to ensure that we are complying And I would rather spend a little bit more money up front to do that than on the back end if we get a notice of violation. Because if they come through and find out that we are not complying, it doesn't matter if we fix it, we're going to get a violation.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how well we fix it or what happens, we're going to get a violation. And so it's expensive, but what we've seen is, and CDOT has this as well, and I'm sure the city has this as well, is that, the cost for that, just, the inspections, but also the BMPs, because you have to, it's a daily upkeep, it's a daily inspection, that has become probably 20 to 30% of a cost of a project. It's pretty expensive. And then on top of it, the other thing that is very important to me is making sure that we have good traffic control, and that is a daily inspection too. So those things, it's pretty easy to sit somebody out there and do oversight and do quantities. The harder part is, all the other things that have to be done as well out there.
Okay, thanks. Okay, any further questions on the counties? So let me just suggest this. Benshi discussed them in two forms. I'd like to they both need to form a recommendation, so let's do a recommendation for 6C and vote on it, and then 6D.
Move for approval of item 6C as presented.
Second.
Joan, second. Any other questions on 6C, which is the line item transfer? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, 6D, Joan?
Move approval of 6D as presented.
And second.
Second from who? Tom? Okay. Jean, sorry. Okay. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, thank you.
Thank you.
Question for you. How's Old Pueblo Road coming?
It's going well. We're about to receive bids for the items that we had, so I feel, and also I think our cranes are going to be out there Monday to be able to set the boxes, so we're hoping here in the next week or so we'll have a good update. We ran into some unanticipated water down at the bottom of our hole, and we had to do some additional reinforcements down there, which took us a little bit longer.
No rubber tires?
No rubber tires,
Okay, all right, okay.
but lots of water.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
6E, the City of Manitou Springs. Shelley, you going to?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the Citizens Advisory Committee. My name is Shelley Koba. I'm the Public Services Director for the City of Manitou Springs. And in your packet, you're going to find a change order request on a project that we recently completed. And this was an oversight on my part. I thought this change order request had been brought to you several months ago. In fact, we submitted it to your staff for reimbursement after paying the contractor. And they astutely caught us. And so here I am with my hat in my hands, begging for forgiveness and also for a change order to Murphy Construction in the amount of $8,802.75 associated with the Brook Street Bridge.
Oh, this is an outrage. You're breaking the bank. Breaking the bank, I'm telling you.
Mr. Chair, I do have a question.
I always want to introduce myself as Manitou Springs Small Fry after I hear these guys' numbers.
Tony's got a question.
I just ran the numbers, and it looks like you're $750 off, and I want to make sure that you don't have to come back again. If it's
I wish I could say that surprised me, but I threw this together, I don't know, in about 30 minutes with Rick. So how about if we add the $750 to the change order request, and that way we can do the math and we'll be covered one way or the other. How does that sound?
So
I can't do the math in my head that fast.
Yeah, 95.53, 40 is, I think, where you'd be.
95.53.40. Okay?
Okay.
Man, I can't even get the small numbers right. Sorry, guys.
I understand, Scott.
How does this amended budget or contract amount compare to the original budget for the project? Is the budget there? Does it have to come from somewhere else?
This is a Priority A project, and the budget is there. This is one of several projects that will be used for that Priority A City of Manitou Springs downtown utilities, drainage, and sidewalk improvements for the downtown district. So this was identified as eligible, and this uses about 40% of that budget. So there is about 60% remaining.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Shelley? Do I hear a motion to approve? Joan? Tom Vieras was second.
With the adjustment.
With the adjustment, okay. And any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Shelley. Member governments and other reports. Colorado Springs Transit Services. Hello, Brian.
Hello, Brian Vituli, City of Colorado Springs, Mountain Metropolitan Transit, with your monthly transit report for the month of July. For our local fixed route services, we carried a little over 271,000 passengers, which was a decrease of 7.3% for July of this year as compared to July of 2017. It's a little bit less of a decrease than last month, which was about 9.3%. So, we're still tracking the ridership. Preliminary numbers for August show somewhat of an increase. Whether or not that turns out to be to get us in the black for August, we'll find out next month. But we're hopeful. For our ADA paratransit services, we saw an increase of 7.6% for that same time period. And for our van pool services, we had 149 invoiced riders, and that's an increase of just shy of 15% for July of this year. So van pools are still doing very well. Just a project update. We're getting ready to implement our fall service changes, some of which we've already done. The new Route 40, which is the service from the Voyager Parkway Transfer Center to Pikes Peak Community College's Rampart campus, that started on August 27th with the start of their fall semester. So that's only like a week and a couple days old. We're tracking the ridership, and hopefully we'll have more to report next month. But we're hopeful that will be a good route, and the college is helping us with marketing, and it was on their student ballot last year. So there's a lot of marketing that's already been done, but we're hoping to continue with some improvements there. And the other changes, frequency improvements on routes 1 and 27, new Route 18, which goes from Boulder up to Academy and Union. Those will start on Monday, October 1st. The new Route 38, the route that goes from Academy and Union to Memorial North and Children's Hospital, that's going to be delayed. It was kind of a joint decision between the hospitals and us and Colorado Springs Health Foundation, who are helping to fund that route. Memorial North improvements aren't going to be done until late winter, early spring, and Children's Hospital is going to be done a little bit later. So we wanted to start the service once all of those facilities have finished all of the work. So we're going to delay that until Monday, April 29th of 2019. So that's the update for now. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Brian?
Mr. Chairman. How are things going with the new transit station, that whole project?
Well, I had some ideas that there would be a question about that, so I have some notes. Yeah, it's, site number 8, which is at Colorado, Sawatch, Cucharas, and Sierra Madre. There have been some really good discussions with the property owner over the last several weeks, which, kind of has renewed that quite a bit. It was kind of stalled for some time, and he seems to really be interested in this development, and has a developer architect team together, and we're hoping to have a face-to-face meeting or a conference call really soon to kind of move it farther along. But in this site, as I said many times since the relocation study was done, this site showed up in pretty much all of the 7 previous studies as a top site. So it's a good site for a good reason, and for many other reasons, it just never worked out. And I think that the property owner seems to really grasp that whole section of southwest downtown is ready to pop and really wants to get on board. And so, I mean, he's gone from 0 miles an hour to about 200 miles an hour in a couple weeks. So we're really very hopeful, cautiously optimistic, but really hopeful. And we do have some backups. The mayor appointed steering committee, prioritized 3 top sites. So we do have a backup if needed. But we're hoping that this will work out, because it's a great location. It can take advantage of a lot of the great things that are going on in that part of town.
And just having been part of that committee, I think as a city employee, they knew that negotiations with this particular landowner were going to be tough, and that was discussed at several of the committee meetings for that selection committee. Another question, Brian. So how are the new and improved bike lanes improving the Nevada Avenue route? No, I didn't say that. I'm sorry.
Well,
are they impacting it at all?
No, we haven't really heard. Kathleen Krager gave an update at CTAB yesterday on the Cascade Avenue improvements, and I think it's a little bit too early to tell, if there's been a shift in traffic volumes to the other streets, but, I'll let her speak to that. But, we haven't seen any issues with the 2 routes that we have on Nevada and Weber. We are looking to kick off a North Nevada Avenue transit corridor analysis within the coming months. That's going to look at primarily as that stretch of North Nevada between Fillmore and Austin Bluffs, Garden of the Gods redevelops. There's been a master plan done there. There's been a transportation sub-plan that looked broadly at transportation improvements, but as that redevelops, how do we want it to redevelop? But this transit corridor analysis will look at, existing conditions, whether we'll be able to use designated right-of-way, the old railroad right-of-way on the east side of Nevada Avenue, but also how transit services transition north to UCCS, but also south to downtown. So we're treating that kind of as an alternatives analysis, which could set us up for further funding for some type of transit improvement. So it'll look at what type of mode we operate there, whether it's enhanced fixed route service, like maybe 10-minute frequency or something like that, or bus rapid transit, or streetcar, light rail. It'll look at all of those alternatives and get a designated routing and service levels and all of that. So that's something we expect to have a very engaged group of citizens that will come take part in that study and give us a lot of great feedback. So.
I know you're looking forward to that.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian. Any questions for Brian? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
you. Item 7B, the City of Colorado Springs Monthly Change Order Property Acquisition Report. It's an informational item. Does anyone have any questions or see a need to discuss any of those? Carlos?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just a question. This is the Pikes Peak Greenway. This is the Uinta underpass. It's a $1.2 million project. I know it's split between PPRTA, about $800,000, and about $400,000 with parks, and it doesn't show that here in this informational report. I'm interested, just information only, just for the record, the final amounts between parks and PPRTA on this project.
Okay, we can bring those, because I think they're getting done. To see, I believe the change orders are coming out of the RTA portion.
Yeah, it just wasn't clear if it's, I don't recall, did the change orders come for, these are actually separate, they didn't come before the CAC and board?
No, because they're under the limits, so that's
They're
why
under the
on
limit,
That's why
yeah.
they're on the log.
So if there was the change orders, I can take perhaps the previous amounts and add these in? Is that, because it was like $768,000 from PPRTA, if I was to add the
Yes.
change orders, that would be the delta?
Yes.
I'll email you on that, but that's just
Okay.
information. I just wanted to see the split between the two buckets of money. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mike?
Yes.
Rep?
Mike,
Uh-huh.
ADA Solutions, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Says you're 79 or 7,908% over.
Yes, because the original, because the original contract was, I believe, 100,000.
So is this a capital project?
No, it's maintenance.
That's maintenance?
Mm-hmm. And that was the new policy that Streets wanted to start bringing these, because they were doing this, and they just wanted to let you guys know how these contracts are getting used.
Okay. Any other questions for Mike? All right. Thanks, Mike. El Paso County Change Order Property Acquisition Report. Any questions for Jennifer or anyone on the county? Okay, seeing none. I have a request to amend the agenda and add a 7E. It's for a pre-overlay pipe presentation. Anyone object to a modification of the agenda at this point to get that informational item? Do I hear a motion to amend the agenda to include a 7E? So even a second from Brian. All those in favor, say aye. Thank you. Dave, you going to kick this off?
Yes, sir. Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dave Scalfrey. I'm with the City of Colorado Springs Public Works Operations and Maintenance Team. I'm the operations manager over the contracted programs team. This is the team that executes both PPRTA programs and also the 2C ballot measure program. Today, there's a few of us among the team that have spoke about the value that there may be to present to this committee some of the PPRTA programs that we do carry out. And we will present to you specifics about the pre-overlay pipe repair program. And then also for our chip seal program, we've got some details that we'd like to share with you regarding that as well. There are many questions on the pre-overlay pipe side of the world that we answer regularly, and a lot of times it's what does this cast-in-place pipe look like? When is it used? And what is the value of it? What's the benefit of it? So we will present information to help clarify what that is. And then also on the chip seal side of the spectrum also, there are many questions that we field regularly after we've applied a chip seal application to a roadway. And a lot of our citizens are asking, why are you paving a road that was in good shape? In all actuality, it's a chip seal an application. So we'll clarify that. And also, we want to be able to provide you with some information that will be helpful and useful to you in conversations that you may be having with citizens as well. And altogether, we have anticipation and hope that we can educate more of the public in conversations such as that. So if I may, before I turn this over to the couple of program supervisors we have, I'd like to introduce the team that are with us today. And right quick, like we've got Brian Wilson, William Foster, Kelly Parker, Melissa Wickland, Jocelyn Watt, and Michael Hensley, and Cole Platt. Today, Cole Platt will be presenting on the pre-overlay pipe program, and Michael Hensley will present also on the chip seal and preliminary programs associated with that. We will ask that in consideration of everyone's time, maybe we can hold any questions until both presentations are complete, and then we'll get your questions asked for you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, David.
Try not to break anything. Bull in a china closet.
Hi, guys. I am Cole Platt. I'm with Operations and Maintenance. I'm the program supervisor that oversees pre-overlay concrete 2C. I used to do the PPRTA concrete, but we've got somebody else doing that now, and I also do pre-overlay pipe. So a lot of times we come to the CAC and to the PPRTA board, and we ask you guys to approve a contract to install a lining, and I thought it would be a good idea to tell you kind of how we look at pipe, how we inspect it, and how we decide to line it if we're going to line it, and also what that lining looks like from inside the pipe. So with our pipe program, why do we inspect it before we overlay? Well, we've taken, in the last few years, we decided to look at our roadways holistically. So we get with CSU and make sure that the water lines are in good shape before we pave, no gas line projects, because the last thing we want to do is for them to cut open our road or a water main to fail underneath our roadway just when we spend all this money on overlay. Well, it's the same thing with storm sewer. You know, we've got storm sewer in the ground that's a 30-year product that's been in there 50 years. Well, that product's in pretty bad shape. Anyway, so we look at that. We get in the pipe in the beginning. We climb in the manhole. We look at the pipe with a flashlight. If it's full of debris, we have a flow chart that you'll see. It's hard to read in your program there, or maybe you took it out because it was so hard to read, but we have a flow chart. We have a flow chart that tells us, you know, for my inspectors, if it's dirty, then we need to jet and vac it and clean it. Is the pipe big enough for us to crawl in? Because we'll walk a pipe with GoPro cameras to save money on video if the pipe is 48 inches or larger. If it's smaller than that, we put a video camera in it and video it so I can determine when I look at the video how I want to fix it. Some of the time we have to repair it. We have to replace it. It's just too far gone. We've had pipes in this town that the invert is so eaten that the pipe actually turns inside of itself. It's just, so you're not going to line that because you have no capacity anyway. So at that point, we look at manholes. If the manholes are evenly spaced for the new drainage criteria manual for inspection purposes, we need to have a good access egress, and I don't want them in any farther than 500 feet. Because if we run into a methane gas at some point with our monitors, I want them to be able to get out of that pipe quick enough. Lining, you can only pull a lining around 800 feet. Straight shot if it's a smaller diameter lining. So we have to put in manholes to line that. The key to lining, and this stuff here, and it's cured three ways. It's cured with hot water, hot steam, or this is a UV cure. There's only one company that does this, but they'll only do it to a 30-inch pipe. They won't do anything over 30 inches in diameter. We are looking at a spin cast right now. I went to a lining demonstration, a little dog and pony show like this, but I want to go see the product itself, and it does actually shoot 8,000-pound concrete onto a pipe, and it spins it in there. And it's also, this is a 50-year product. That's also a 50-year product. So we're looking at that. I just, I wanted to get in front of you guys. I wanted to let you know kind of what you're approving. It always helps to see a product. If you get to these pictures, right? Where's my mouse go? This is a pipe that we looked at last year. This pipe had a concrete invert put in it some years ago because the bottom of the pipe was being eaten. Well, now the rest of it is starting to corrode on top of that concrete now and starting to get holes in it, and it's going to fail. When it's done, it's smooth. It improves the M factor. It improves the hydraulics of the pipe because it don't have the ridges in it from the corrugation anymore. And it's a 50-year product that costs a portion of the price. If we R&R pipes, it's very expensive. Most of the time, this is a cheaper route. So that's really, yes, sir.
How do you get the old crud out?
We go, the contractors will go in and clean it, and then they'll steam clean it. This is a structural lining. You mean the old pipe? That old pipe can go away. This is a structural lining. This is just like a pipe. So you can see the thickness difference in these two samples. It's the load that's on the pipe. However, if it's got more cover, if it's 30 feet deep, your lining is going to get thicker because it's got all that pressure on it. So this comes with an engineered stamped structural lining. So the old pipe, it don't even have to really be a pipe, to be honest with you. You could pull that old pipe out, and if it was still round, they could line through it, and we've got just as good a product as we had there before.
So you might actually physically remove the old pipe.
You could. We don't normally. We don't normally because it's got to have that, most of the time, it's got to have that hose pipe. With our expansive soils, if we were to try to pull the pipe out, boom, everything just caves in. So,
Okay. All right.
Any questions for me?
Nice. Good job, Colvin.
Yeah.
Is that concrete that you're looking at, spun cast, is that gunite?
It is not. It is not. It's their own epoxy mix. They won't.
So they're using.
Yeah, it's an epoxy mix deal that, and I'm waiting, the PowerPoint was great, but I'm waiting for them to do a pipe so I can go watch it and see what's going on with it. I mean, I can even make a PowerPoint look okay, so.
Brian?
I was just wondering if you could pass it around so we can look at it.
Absolutely. Be careful because the edges are sharp. And this, if you look on the back side of this, this is the bladder. So when they do this lining, they will pull it through in a bladder, and it's just flat. And they pull it through, and then they can fill it with steam or hot water, and it takes the form of the hose pipe, and then cures right there.
Okay.
It's
Which one is UV cured, you said?
the green one. The green one.
So where do you get the UV?
They have a machine that cures it UV. We use it, I like to
Okay.
use it more
I know.
towards the, when I'm closer to creek beds. I prefer a UV cure or a steam cure. I don't want that water going into the waters of the state. And not that it's bad, I don't think it's good practice.
Okay. So I got one question.
Yes, sir.
When you're looking at manholes, do you make sure they line up with the rut on the road so that you run over it every time when you go?
That's only on your way home.
Where's your driver?
Yeah.
That's all right.
All right, thanks, Cole.
Thank you, guys.
Those manholes are all 3 inches above or below.
Mr. Hensley, you going to,
Went a little faster than either one of us expected on that.
Oh.
Good afternoon, my name is Michael Hensley. I'm the program supervisor for the resurfacing programs. If I can see. There we are, make it just a little bit easier. So I deal with all of the resurfacing programs, including the 2C overlay program. Majority of the reason we're here today is to talk about what we do with the PPRTA programs that we deal with. Chip seal, our dig out and patch program, and our crack seal programs. So we get inundated with questions and just concerns from the citizens, and like Dave alluded to earlier, why did you just pave this perfectly good roadway? There's a completely different approach to a preventative maintenance application as opposed to a mill and overlay. So the mill and overlay is where we actually take off a portion of the surface of the roadway and put new asphalt on top. For a chip seal application, we put it over the top of the existing surface. So the roadways are actually in good shape. So the perception from the public that don't understand what we're doing is that we're paving a good road, when all we're actually doing is resealing the roadway surface and providing a new wear surface. So, some of the other questions that we get frequently are, what is a maintenance application? Why do we do the preventive maintenance applications? What types do we use? It opens up an entire line of questioning from the public. We try to keep them as general as possible because there are a lot of technical specifications and a lot of designs and engineers that are involved with a lot of the products that we use. So we try to keep it as simplistic as possible. Some of the questions that we get, why don't you do the work at nighttime? Well, majority of the work that we do at night are on the arterial and collector roadways. If we try to do night work in the residentials, I think we can kind of see where that would go. So it's kind of self-explanatory at that point. Cool. Sorry. So what are the types of things that we do? So the programs that we focus on are the chip seal dig out and patch program in support of the chip seal, and then we do a crack seal program. I think the biggest program that we get complaints about is the crack seal program. We go through a roadway and we reseal any of the surface cracks that are in the roadway that would allow water to get into the roadway underneath. Water underneath the roadways are the worst combination that we could possibly have, especially in this region with the soils that we have and the freeze-thaw cycles that we have. So we try to keep the water on the surface where it's supposed to be and keep it in our drainage systems. We get done with our crack seal programs, and the first question is, that looks horrible. Why did you do that? Well, we're not in the business to beautify the community. We're in the business to make sure that the infrastructure in the community stays sound, and that's our primary goal for crack seal. For the chip seal program, what we try to focus on is a roadway that is in fair to good condition. What we're trying to do is keep our good roads good. If we maintain a good roadway in good condition, the overall life cycle of that roadway is exponentially extended. So we do these preventive applications to try and extend as many of these roadways as we can. We have 5,700 lane miles of roadway in our network in the city. So we are about that far behind Denver proper as a metropolitan area as far as size and the infrastructure. And we're very quickly gaining on them, and we're about to surpass them with the growth at the rate that we're at currently. So we've got to do these interim maintenance efforts in order to provide an infrastructure that's going to stay or maintain itself. So we have a PQI system, a pavement quality index that we use to rate all of our roadways or grade the roadways. A 10 on our roadway or PQI values are brand new roads, and they're in excellent condition. As the roads get older, as we get potholes, as utility cuts are performed, settlement in the roadway, cracks in the roadway, things of that nature, all these distresses degrade the roadway, and we count those as specific values. So we are looking at a chart in our office at a certain level where we will stop a chip seal application, and we actually have to move into a mill and overlay application. So a roadway can be too far or not good enough to accept a chip seal, because then we're just wasting money. So we've got a pretty robust assessment program, and the reason we stop at that level for the PQI values is so that we're not wasting money. We're trying to make sure that the dollars go as far as they possibly can. And dollar for dollar, a chip seal application over the life cycle of the roadway provides us with one of the best values, along with the crack seal to support the sealing efforts. The other program we use in conjunction with this is our dig out and patch program. Some of the roadways that are within our range or value between the 6 and 10 do have areas that are failing. We've got potholes that grow. In case you didn't know, we do have a pothole problem in town. It continues there. And we do have areas of town where some utilities have failed, and they come in and they do a cut and a patch in the roadway, and sometimes those patches don't hold up as well as they should. Even though they maintain through their warranty period, over time they still settle, and we come in and we'll try to maintain those and bring those back up to a roadway surface that's somewhat flat and level. That way, when we come in with the chip seal, we've got a good uniform surface to cover. Sometimes it's just plain wear and tear. You get rutting. Sometimes we'll have a manhole lid in a wheel path, but only in Jim's area of town. Those are the things that we try to maintain. We're not going to get 100% on every single one of them. If we were to do that, then our costs would be the exponential piece that we would not be able to afford. So we address the worst of the worst areas, and we bring these back up to a certain acceptance level. That way we can put a good surface cover on top of them. So a couple of the pictures that you've got in your handout. We try to get back up just a little bit. So our chip seal application, what is it exactly? It's a fine layer of emulsion. We've got the distributor truck laying the emulsion down. Directly behind that truck, which is actually literally just outside of the picture frame, we have a chip spreader, which is kind of difficult to see in this picture, but on the right-hand side, you'll see a truck with a large piece of equipment on the back. They're actually connected with a pintle. The spreader truck actually pulls the aggregate truck behind it, and they drop the aggregate in front of the equipment so that they're driving on the aggregate, not the tar. So if you've ever seen the application, they're actually typically pulling against traffic. So we have a very robust traffic setup with these. And once the spreader has completed its application, then we have rollers that come through, and they actually knead the product into that emulsion. It just seeds the material into the tar, if you will. Once that's done, we've got a sweeping operation that comes in. They pick up the loose aggregates and materials, typically the same night. And then the following evening, they'll do another sweep, and then we'll do what's called a fog seal application, just to lock everything in on top, and it puts a fine layer of oil or film on the top to seal it. So that's a chip seal application. So I wanted to make sure you guys kind of understood this, so that each year when we renew these contracts, this is what we're renewing. The lane miles that we're able to cover annually so far at our funding level is about 100 lane miles a year. So with that, and then, of course, the last picture I've got for chip seal is the overall train of equipment. That's what it looks like in whole, in operation. I believe this was on Milton Proby Parkway last year. So it's a very long, drawn-out train of equipment. So we typically do half the roadway at a time, and we'll flip the traffic to the completed section and do the other half of the roadway. Very, very fast process, very labor intensive. So each piece of equipment has got on average of 2 people assigned to the equipment, plus you'll have 1 or 2 bodies walking with each piece of equipment as flaggers or safety personnel. So very labor intensive. We've got a lot of people on the ground, a lot of equipment moving at the same time, and there's just a lot of things happening all at once. So that's kind of the nutshell version of our chip seal. For the dig out and patch operations, I guess those pictures didn't make it in. All right, well, that's easy enough. Makes it easy for me, too. The dig out and patch operations that we do in support of range in size from a pothole-sized patch, and they can be all the way to a full lane width, and an actual paving piece of equipment is used to do the repairs. We try to limit those, again, trying to keep our good roads good, so we're not repaving the roadway just to chip seal the roadway. Kind of counterproductive at that point. But the chip seal operation is something that we utilize as much as we possibly can, and we are looking to expand that program, year over year, and little by little as the roadways are continuing to improve with our 2C paving and some of the PPRTA overlay funds that we're able to use. So we're slowly moving into residentials. We're going to try to start focusing on our residentials, just to try and maintain those over time. So, are there any questions that I could possibly answer, or anything that I was not that I was vague on that needs to be clarified?
Carlos?
Thank you, sir. That was a very informative presentation. So for each of these types of maintenance applications, about how long does it extend the life of the road surface? And
a lot of it depends on the current condition of the roadway. On average,
I understand.
On average, we're looking anywhere from 3 to 7 years, and there are a lot of conditions involved in what would determine that. But the average that we're seeing so far for this region is 3 to 7 years.
Okay.
Industry expectations are 3 to 5, so we're somewhat exceeding those expectations in some areas.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you just do the roads in the city?
Yes, ma'am. Just within the city limits.
You would never do Ute Pass, would you?
No, ma'am.
Okay, I just thought I'd ask.
There's not enough beer trucks in the city to do that.
There probably are, but I don't think we could afford the volume that we need.
Tom, did you have a question?
How, every mile, so to speak, or every road carrying this PQI index all over the city?
Yes, sir.
And you have a team that goes around and surveys that continually, or
We do.
is there a phone number you have for people can call and report crimes?
We do have a pothole hotline, if you will, or anything other than just a pothole. If there's just a concern in the roadway, we do have we maintain that accessibility. I'm sorry.
What's the number?
Speed dial.
No, I have the GoCo Springs app on my phone that works really well.
We have a multitude of social media applications. I believe the number is 385-5411. All right, so 385-5411. I'm in the office, so I typically don't call. I just yell down the hallway. I get a quicker response that way. But there should be a series of prompts to get you to the right place, because we do have an in-house crew that specify, or they specialize in specific things, whereas we're the contracted programs teams. So the things that we're dealing with are things that are directly a result of what our contractors are doing in the field, not just the potholes or the cracks or when are you paving my road, which is constantly asked.
We
So
seem to see up on the mesa, holes open up quick. When out of motorcycles come down.
they do. If that number's handed out at will. We encourage people to call. Our staffing is, at this point, we're kind of restricted just for contractor oversight for our side of the house, for the contracted programs team. And we don't have the opportunity to go out and drive every roadway every day. If we did that, then we'd probably all be a lot better off. But we encourage folks to call in. The more people that can help us with eyes in the street, the better off we're going to be, because it helps us identify those deficiencies a lot faster.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I actually appreciate Tom's comments about the motorcycles, because the chip seal, before it's been fogged, yeah, you already know where I'm headed.
I do.
But that, as well as something I've been harping on ever since the city started laying down the plasticized lane markings. We had 2 riders go down in the recent rains just a few weeks ago because of those things. And it's, with all the concerns over bike safety, nobody seems to be thinking about motorcycle safety. So it's
just a larger bike with a motor, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Understood. No, we, believe it or not, we do take those concerns to heart. We really do. And the plasticized pieces, the tabs that you're referring to, we're actually required by federal law to maintain those in place to identify where the striping was at previously, so that when the final fog seal is completed, when they come through and do the final striping, they know where that goes. So we have to put those in place.
Figures the feds would do something like that.
Rick? Yeah, on this rating scale, 6 to 10?
Yes, sir.
What level do you decide to either chip seal or to what you do with the roads? What between 6 and 10?
It can be anywhere within that range.
Yeah,
so we have a multitude of streets to choose from.
But if you go out and you find one that you judge to be a 7, then you do something with it, or?
We do. If we're not able,
what would you do?
We would typically address that as a chip sealed street or roadway as a potential. Yes, sir.
Okay.
We have a list that we try to pick from and try to keep it citywide as a spread out program.
But then an 8 maybe wouldn't get it.
Typically would still be there, but it's a lot of it's going to depend on the community that we're the neighborhood that we're dealing with, and we look at it could be a very long conversation. We look at a multitude of factors. The PQI value that we look at is kind of the baseline. That's where we start.
Okay.
So we look at that PQI value as a rating. All the distresses that were discussed earlier with the rutting and the cracks and the other cuts and patches that go into that, we have to take that into account. How much repair work do we need to do before we can put the chip seal application on it? So the 8, a 7 or an 8 rating is the number that's for the entire roadway segment from point A to point B. So we look at a myriad of factors before we make the final selection.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Tom?
Is that available on the web anywhere?
The,
For us to look at?
as far as the PQI values, Dave? I don't think the PQI values themselves are there.
Yeah.
I would have to look to see, to be honest. I haven't looked on our website in quite some time. We can look and see.
Ed, go ahead, then I've got a question.
Annually, how many lane miles do you chip seal? You said you had over 5,000 miles of road, and I was just curious what the percentage was, or how many actual miles?
At our current funding levels, we're able to address about 100 lane miles a year with the chip seal applications. So we're resurfacing 100 lane miles with chip seal.
So 50 year cycle.
Roughly, if we were to look at it in that aspect, yes. So funding is not quite where we'd like to see it, but as far as our resources go, that's about all we can support with our funding as well.
Michael, I got a question. The chip sealing has gotten better over the years. It looks like they're using a different material than they did a couple of years ago. Less flying objects. They seem to be sealed in better or something. But on several roads lately, when they come back in and paint the lines, on an asphalt road, it's relatively smooth and the paint stands out. On some recent roads that have been chip sealed, and on Austin Bluffs is an example just east of, that you just finished recently. Those lines are very, very dim. They're not bright. It's very difficult to see, especially if there's any water on the road. I know those little tabs are out there. I teach behind-the-wheel driving for teenagers, and so I'm all over the city, and I'm driving on these things. And it's very difficult to see those white lines. Do you put down more than one coat, or is it you paint it and then that's what it is, or is it a standard where you can only put so many ounces of paint per stripe? Or
well, I'll be honest with you. Our in-house teams actually support our striping, just directly behind our application. So what I can do is address that with our team, and because I have to tell you straight up and be honest with you that I'm not involved with how they do that process.
Right.
I can tell you that the chip seal as a whole, when we're completed with that process, is not going to be as smooth as a new roadway that's been paved, because the aggregates, it's open and exposed. It's an open grade friction course,
Right.
if you will. And when you lay a flat piece of paint on top of it and melt it in, or even if you spray it in, it's going to follow the contours.
Yep.
Where on a new roadway, it's already flat, so
Right.
you're going to have that. It's going to be a different application at that point. But I will address it with them to see if there's anything they can do for the visibility problem.
Yeah, it's just not very bright, and so I've noticed it more recently, and maybe it's just because I'm paying attention to it more because there's more surfacing going on. But anyway, I just thought I'd bring that. Any other questions on this? Because I got one other. It's not related, but
I'd like to address that. Just your comment. When they did Academy, like last year, I said something to Corey, and they came back apparently not long after. When I say long after, within a couple of weeks, and painted it a second time, and it's not difficult to see now. I couldn't even see them at night.
Okay.
That's aside. I've got another question, but Jim.
no, mine is not related to this presentation.
I'm not sure mine is either. He talks about where manholes are, and I didn't know I'd moved into his neighborhood. Different issue. Literally, why do I go uphill or down a pothole that is actually a manhole? And you have just chip sealed it, and I speak specifically of some on Murray, and I'm serious. They are serious bumps, period. And they aren't necessarily in, quote, the travel lane. There's a couple on Murray that are really pretty close to the curb.
So we don't do manhole lid adjustments with the chip seal application because the chip seal is literally either a 1/4 of an inch aggregate or a 3/8 aggregate. So we don't typically do the adjustments. Now, if we come across a utility vault that is a communications vault or any kind of a vault in the roadway, those lids actually are not adjustable. They are set in the concrete. So we typically have to try to taper and work the roadway surface into the lid itself. Some of them they're just impossible to get where they need to be. So we're actually working with some of the communications folks, some of the local vendors, if you will, to see if there's anything that we can do to address those. Because we get the complaints and the calls all the time. And a lot of them are from the motorcycling community. And they are...
Front-end alignment
what's that?
Front-end alignment shop.
Right. So we're cognizant of the issue. So we're trying to figure out how to address that.
All right, my point is, literally on Centennial, both sides of Garden of the Gods, new construction, there's a crew in there, I don't know when I say afterwards, and they're digging out asphalt and they're putting a lift ring in, okay? You're talking about a 3/8 inch chip seal. I'm not talking about a 3/8 inch drop. I'm talking a bump. I mean, a big bump. And literally, when they roto-mill before overlays even.
Right. So if it's something where they're coming back and they're actually cutting the lid out and raising it back up, those should be coming back up to grade.
Right.
And we have an inspector from our utilities group that are actually overseeing that process.
But nothing's done to where you chip seal over something's a problem, and you're not chip sealing for the sake of discussion 3 times to make an 1.5 inch drop.
No, we're not. So we can address the lids, that's for sure.
Okay, any other questions? My question's not related to the presentation, but it kind of is. And Corey's mentioned in the past, you guys were struggling with the expanding cracks or the shrinking asphalt kind of thing, and you've been researching, you found a solution for that, or?
We've not.
Okay.
What we've done over the last couple of years and what we're doing this year. 2 years ago, we did a product called RCI. It's a reflective crack interlayer. It's a highly polymerized layer of asphalt that goes between a milled surface and a 2-inch overlay. Essentially, it's just a rubber mat that goes in between the two, and it's there to kind of bridge that gap. So it's more flexible. We will still get reflective cracking on the surface, but it won't open up to the subgrade. So it's essentially sealing everything below from water getting in and creating the havoc that it does. We've found quite a bit of success over the last 2 years, but it's supposed to be a longer lasting product, so we will see over time how it performs. Over the first 2 years, we've seen, based on industry numbers and standards, about an 80% reduction in the reflective cracking, which is great. What we're working on now is that cost-benefit analysis, because it was not a cheap product to use. What we're utilizing for the 2C program is a newer product for us, and it's actually an asphalt reinforcement fiber, and it is designed to reduce reflective cracking and increase strength, and reduce the reflective cracking or defer that cracking by about a third to two-thirds over a cycle. So if we pave a roadway and we've got reflective cracking within a year, with this product, what we're being told by the vendors is that it could be 2 to 3 years before we start seeing those cracks. So we're slowly looking at things. What we're doing this year over on Tut Boulevard, the entire north and south corridor from Constitution all the way to Dublin, 2 different methods. One is essentially we're doing a router method with the milling machine to cut out those white cracks and do a patch product, and then overlay on top of it. We'll see over time how that performs. On the northern end, the crews are actually milling the entire roadway surface, putting a leveling course of asphalt over the top of these. We are putting in a glass grid product over the area where the cracks are at, and then we're putting a 2-inch mat on top of that. So we've got a 3-inch layer of asphalt with a mid-layer of glass grid. We're trying to leverage these dollars in a method that's going to help us prevent the cracking, or at least defer the cracking over time. So it's something that we're trying to make our roadways last longer before we have to come in and do the interim maintenance efforts.
Okay.
Sir?
A few years ago here, we heard a steel, instead of rock, it was steel.
Slag aggregate. That's actually the product that we're using currently. It's actually a steel byproduct that we're getting out of it. It's excellent. It's an excellent product so far.
And it doesn't rust away?
Does not.
It's slag.
It's steel.
It's
Correct.
slag.
But it is slag. It's a composite section of.
Gene first, and then Brian.
Sir?
Tom's question jogged my memory to ask about this. How sharp is the aggregate, and is anything done to round the edges so that tire wear is not as excessive?
I don't believe we have anything that would be considered a jagged edge. They're not rounded because then you would have a very slippery surface. So they do have to have what's called a fractured face, an industry standard specification actually. I don't believe I've seen any studies that show an increase in tire wear. Contrary to popular belief, I haven't seen anything to support any additional wear and tear on tires at this point.
With that steel, you don't get sharp edges with the slag?
No, sir. The way it's processed and crushed and screened out, it is actually down to a specification.
Brian?
Real quickly, going back to the spreading cracks and boundary surfaces, there's been a lot of curb and gutter work done in the city with the extended gutter concrete coming up against an asphalt boundary. And what we've been seeing is widespread deterioration of the asphalt boundary next to the concrete border, and it's causing wells. Have we come up with any kind of a solution to that issue?
Actually, our crack seal program addresses that. We call it edge line failure.
Okay,
It's where the
yeah.
roadway actually shrinks and pulls away from the concrete, and you've got an open edge.
Yeah.
Again, when water gets in, water doesn't evaporate when it's down in that moist area. It stays there in the freeze-thaw cycle.
Yeah.
And even just consistent moisture all the time, if it sits in wet, it's going to start to deteriorate just from moisture. So that's one of the things that we are addressing with our crack seal program, is to seal those edges off.
Okay, thanks.
You bet.
Okay.
Anything else?
Any further questions for these? Great presentation, guys. Thank for that information. All of that is helpful.
Grab your samples.
Yes. I inadvertently left out item 7D, which is the quarterly reports from member government. Rick,
If I might, just an editorial comment connected to this. There is going to be an issue come up on the ballot in November about an increase in tax for roads. Please study them very hard, because if you go along with the one that comes from the Denver Chamber of Commerce, we will end up not having the advantage of using our 2C type program here. So there's a big difference on which way you decide to go on that. The Chamber of Commerce is for the people in Denver and I-70. Thank you.
Is that a blue book issue? Will we be getting that in the blue books?
Yeah, it'll come in the book issue.
Thanks.
And what am I doing here? Yeah, it'll be you'll hear more on it, and in that blue book issue, it'll show up. There are two different plans on doing roads. In the one that the is supported by the Chamber of Commerce of Denver is the one that's very
Dr. Cox, self-serving?
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Self-serving. So it's going to cost us a lot of money if that ends up winning over whether we defeat that, and then the city can maybe come back to the voter for an extension of the 2C. But we'd lose something like, I forget what the mayor said, but it's probably $10 million in the amount of money we will get back from the state if that passes, and what we would get if we continued a 2C program.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks, city team. Great job, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks, Dave, everybody. Item 7D was an informational item, but it's the quarterly project and program status reports. For some of our newer members, this quarterly report, Rick, goes out to the member governments provide status on all their projects. This is a great product if you've got a constituent asking questions, because anything that's currently funded within the RTA is in here in the status and a little bit about the project. So this is a great tool to keep handy if you're out and about and people are asking questions. And so any questions about that? It was an informational item. Okay, sorry for jumping around. Item 8, administrative actions, report on recent board actions. Rick?
This is also an information item. Does anyone have any questions?
Seeing none. 8B.
Okay, the CDOT I-25 gap project update. This is my one-page snapshot, and it's just informational. So any questions? Yes, sir.
I noticed it said that toll revenue could only be used on the express lanes, and I thought when they were giving us the presentation, they said it could be used anywhere on that corridor, not just the toll lanes.
Yeah, they said.
This is, I remember your previous recollection as well, but this is a paraphrase from John Hall, the project manager. So I'm taking that as a more clear update.
This is why I don't trust
that HP, since HPTE is an enterprise fund, enterprise fund under Tabor. So it supposedly keeps its own revenue and spends its own revenue. So John Hall told me that that revenue could only be spent on HP. It's generated by HPTE fund, and therefore, according to him, can only be spent on HPTE functions within the corridor.
In the EA, on, I think, page 4, line 11 or something like that, because I commented on it, they said they could use the money anywhere between Monument and C-470. And when I queried them about why that distance, they said, well, that was our original study area. And my response to that was, well, aren't you always looking at I-25? Why not go to the Wyoming border?
Sure.
You know? Because I think if it's being generated in one section, it ought to be spent in that section. Because the number of lanes we're going to have are going to be 6. There's 12 north of us.
Yes.
And all the money will go up there.
It's probably a question to keep asking in the months ahead, because obviously the toll, according to John, won't start until the full 18 miles is complete, so that's 3 years away. So, I think we need to keep it on our radar and keep asking.
Gene?
Interesting that this should come up, because late last week I got bored and I went looking at U.S. code. So that gives you an idea of how excited I was that evening. I found a section in U.S. code pertaining to federal highways, and I looked specifically at the section regarding toll roads and adding toll roads to existing U.S. and federal highways. And there are caveats in there. I don't remember the specific, but there's several, about 5, that delineate that money coming off of a toll road has to be spent on various things pertaining to that section of the toll road. And at the end of the list of things that you had to spend money on, if CDOT certifies that a toll road is fully funded and that there is nothing that they need to spend money on that section, they can take the tolls generated and spend it on any federal road in the state per that section of U.S. code. Now, whether or not that section applies to the specific way that this toll section is being funded or not, I can't say. And there may be other sections of code that are applicable. But leastways is a general overall category on adding toll lanes to existing roads. If they can certify that the money doesn't need to be spent there, it can go anywhere on a federal road in the state.
Interesting. When you get bored, you can try looking up the federal acquisition regs, and you can try digging into the FAR if you really want to go to sleep. Tom?
This came up when I worked for the Turnpike Authority of Kansas. We couldn't spend money on anything else but our road. The state couldn't. So that adjusted our toll rates. Otherwise, we wind up funding roads all over the state. Now, the Turnpike Authority just became part of the Kansas Highway Department. But there's totally separate facilities, people, and all that.
There is.
Maintenance crews are different. The whole thing is different. They don't share the funds. It's just administrative people that are.
The high-performance enterprise thing that they have, I've been on their website, and they do have some rules, and I believe by statute, the state can't take in revenue. And so this enterprise fund is their mechanism to accept tolls. And so there is some information on there about how they operate and where that money can go. It's been a while since when this GAP thing first came up, but I was digging around. But there is some information on that. So if you get bored, call Gene. But
Sidebar to this thing, this discussion, as you see on television every so often about, well, we're doing this, we're going to have 3 lanes all the way up, but by the time we get done, we're going to need 4 every direction. Is not helping the voters from vote for this thing. I'm getting a lot of flack out of neighbors and that screw this. You know, why bother putting in 3 lanes if they're gonna jam them up like the clock is now, which is the words the guys have used on television. It's gonna be just as bad 3 years from now with 3 lanes all the way unless we go to 4. So we ought to be building 4 on that 18 miles now because it would be cheaper to do it. Yeah, it would be cheaper to do it now instead of tearing it all up, so to speak, you know, expanding it. But if you look at the way the grading is looking on this thing, it's gonna not be terribly difficult to take those emergency lanes they're putting on each side of the 3 and convert one to a highway lane if you wanted to.
What CDOT has said, and I'm not advocating, I'm just repeating what they have said to respond to you, Tom, is that they have the right-of-way now for 3. They don't have the right-of-way for 4. So that would be a 1 to 2 to 3 year process to do the environmental, generate the money to buy the right-of-way. That additional time and money, if you want to, this is CDOT talking, if you want to do 2 more lanes in each direction now, then you're looking at 3 to 4 years from now before you do anything. So that's the choice. Do you want 1 more now that's told with the construction starting yesterday, or do you want to wait 3, 4, 5 years to start anything?
Their right-of-way goes out to that fence that's 80 feet off to the side of the road.
In part.
Yeah, in parts.
Yeah. Okay, we can't solve this one. Any other? All right, thanks for the update. Stay tuned, more to follow. 8C.
Status of the Walmart lawsuit, nothing new, just waiting to see if the Supreme Court accepts the case with Walmart appealing to the Supreme Court after losing unanimously in the 3-judge Court of Appeals panel and also losing at the district court level.
And the key thing here is that 10% chance of all repeals get accepted, so hopefully this stays in our favor. 8D.
Okay, a fun one. Robert's Rules, and I'm just throwing this out, some thoughts out on the table, not asking for a decision today, because you may have access, you may be a Robert's Rules expert yourself or have access to Robert's Rules experts, but here are 2 or 3 thoughts. Number 1, the CAC seems to, on a fairly regular basis, been using the concept of a friendly amendment. And we cannot find anything in Robert's Rules that allows such a thing, a friendly amendment. So, but the flip side of that coin is that even though the board has amended your bylaws to say that you will follow Robert's Rules, I don't imagine that the board would care if you want to modify Robert's Rules to suit your taste. So the first issue is, even though Robert's Rules strictly doesn't allow friendly amendments, do you want to continue to allow them or not? All Robert's Rules speaks to is, any main motion can be offered. There can be a motion to amend the main motion with a second, and then then the chair then takes a vote on the amendment to the main motion that passes or fails. Then you go back and then vote on the main motion, either without the amendment or with the amendment. So that's the first question on the table is, do you want to allow friendly amendments? Because Robert's Rules, we can't find where there is such. That yes, you can amend a main motion, but we cannot find the word friendly.
If I could comment on this, the reason that this was, and Tom will probably remember, the reason we started doing friendly amendments was the normal process becomes rather laborious when you have motion after motion after motion that gets, so the reason we kind of kept it a collegial kind of a thing was to allow for business to move along a little bit more quickly than it normally would have. So that's why that came about. So I don't know if, obviously it's up to the group whether or not they want to continue.
If you want to allow friendly amendments, that's fine, but if the motion maker and the motion seconder do not accept the friendly amendment, there still should be a vote on the amendment if there's a motion and a second on the amendment. Even if the motion maker declines the friendly amendment, you can have an unfriendly amendment, is my point. You just because the motion maker and seconder say, I don't accept your friendly amendment, doesn't mean that's the end of the process. That could be a way to speed things up, but if there can be unfriendly amendments to a main motion.
All right, Carlos. Carlos. Go ahead, Tom.
This is awfully early compared to how we used to get out at 5:30 or 6 o'clock, because we'd argue something for an hour. And the amendments speeded that up tremendously. Friendly amendments speeded that whole process up, otherwise it took forever.
Okay, Carlos?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Totally independently, I went to the library and checked out Robert's Rules of Order because
you guys have got sleep issues, man.
So I have some sleep issues as well. I just wanted to, and again, this was from the last meeting because I was, confused as to the proceedings. I just wanted, you can make an motion for an amendment, but Robert's Rules of Order also allows for something called a division of a question. So you can offer an amendment, but you can also, we call it the bifurcation, but it's a division of the question. And my recollection at the last meeting was that was being proposed was to divide or to split up the motion of 5 or 6 items into separate items because they could stand alone. And Robert's Rules of Order permits that division of the question. I motion that we divide the following, in addition to an amendment, which would be changing, adding, or modifying the wording of a main motion that's in progress. My sense is that, stick with Robert's Rules of Order, and I can want to speed things up and expedite the meeting, but I'm passing through. The next group that's going to come after me and us, if we have this standing rule that's different than Robert's Rules, my concern would be just how do you promulgate that forward to, future committees who may only have knowledge of Robert's Rules. Now you have Robert's Rules plus, some additional.
Actually, they refer to Robert's Rules of Order newly revised, and they do get revised.
We take care of that because Brian and Thomas are going to be here.
I could be dead tomorrow.
That would be fantastic. I would love that. Yes.
Okay, we're Joan, did you want to say anything? Okay. Cheryl?
This puts a greater burden on you, Jim, to call the question and ask for a vote and then move on. I mean, if that's the concern that it goes too long with, back and forth, that, it would reside with you, making you the enemy, of course, that you call the question, ask for a vote, and then ask for another motion, rather than prolong the discussion over, some of these other things. So it's tough.
Yeah, it is, and I don't want to. I don't want to tap too much more of you guys' times, but I remember some of the long debates and conversations from my early years on the committee, and just so you guys know, I think we all have an opportunity to state our mind on something, but I try to control that when we start repeating other things and we're in the second or third time around. That's when I sometimes step in and try to control the conversation a little bit. So I get what you're saying, Cheryl, and it is. Robert's Rules can become very laborious because in a large controversial issue, you get amendment after amendment, then you've got to take them in order and vote on them around, and it can get very confusing. And so, Carlos, your point is well taken. I would just suggest that as a group, think about this. If you're tired, you can't go to sleep at night, go to the library and get Robert's Rules and read that, or you're like Gene. But I'm interested in what you have to say and how you want to go about this. I I tend to want to more follow Robert's rules, but I'm also not so rigid that I can't understand that there are sometimes you make an amendment, and we do sometimes jump and make an amendment, call a question and want to make a recommendation, do something, and there may be someone hasn't had an opportunity to express their opinion on something, and my thought is that what you have to say may change my opinion as long as we're open to receiving comments from folks. And so this group has done a really good job over the years of stating their piece and doing their homework and stating something. And so I think that's important that we all hear what each of us have to say about an object or about a subject. But there are other times when somebody just immediately puts a vote out there or recommendation to approve thing before the discussion is over. And that's awkward, because once that's done, I can't back that up. We have to proceed along that line. There is a time for discussion. And so it's a balancing act. I get Carlos's point. I get what you're trying to say. Joan?
Yeah, having been on a debate team in college, which was
Me
with
too.
Robert's Rules.
Me too.
Let's face it, we, for lack of a better term, bastardize the poor guy, but, it is what it is. I think we pretty much understand where we're coming from, because we could get stuck in the weeds so easily. If you want to get really technical about how you make a motion and the verbiage you use and all of that, we could be here till the cows come home and next year. I think with a friendly amendment, we pretty much understand the give and take, and I don't think that there's been an abuse of it or a real problem. I can think of a couple of my motions where I didn't like the friendly amendment, but, it's, I think we're just trying to, if it ain't totally broke, don't fix it. And since it seems to work, it may not be kosher, but, we're not a bunch of parliamentarian experts either that want to stay here till 8 o'clock at night.
Yes.
I just want to comment that you said that a motion's made and then you're locked in, but as I understand it, the motion is made, it's seconded, and then there's a discussion.
Right.
So the discussion can change the motion.
Right.
So we're really not putting an end to it by putting a motion in.
No, I guess what I meant was that we should be having a discussion after the motion and second.
I roger that.
Sometimes I get that backwards. And so following the letter, it's a motion, then there's a second, and if there's no second, the motion dies. And then there's discussion. And as you said, the discussion may be very informative, and if we're open-minded and listening to what people have to say, it might change the person who made the motion. They may choose to withdraw that if what the discussion has brought up and informed the group. Likewise, someone, as we've often done, I would like to propose an amendment to that. Using the word friendly, I don't really care, as long as we follow that process and we're consistent with that process. And sometimes the inconsistency has been my fault.
Well, and I guess with the way I've done in the meetings I've run is I like to get the motion on the floor so the discussion is circled or targeted toward the motion, not going around and around about stuff that's not part of the motion.
Very good point.
And then you call a question. That's where you say, discussion's done.
Right.
Let's get a vote.
Okay. Yeah, I agree, and that I agree with that process, and that's generally how we do. We get a little off track every now and then, but Rick?
Rick.
But Rick Hoover, I agree with what you're saying, but I think that the flip side of that is also true. There might not be a motion
and you need some discussion to focus the conversation to get to a motion. So you might need discussion before the motion, but you always should have a discussion after the motion, and second. Okay.
All right, my point is, you've made the motion, you have the discussion, called the question, what happens next? There's not the opportunity at that time to make another motion.
I would need to research that, because I don't know the answer to that.
Well,
I don't know if you have.
No, at that point, you come to the vote.
Yeah, you vote, and then you propose a new motion.
Someone could say, I want to make a motion to amend that, or I
Correct.
agree with it. So it's,
That would be the way to do it, would be to amend the main motion.
But does a call the question need a second?
No.
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 Call the question,
the
so
chair
you
calls
vote.
it.
So anyone can end
Anyone
discussion?
can call for the question.
Anyone can end the discussion after the motion and second by just saying, I call the question?
Yes.
But I think the board chair has to approve that, right?
I don't know. I
I
don't know.
don't know. Okay.
I think it's
No, if
voted
you-
on, it might be a two-thirds, and the handout that you had has some information about different kinds of motions and call to question. I think it's maybe two-thirds for a call to question. The idea is that, people who still have concerns, you're not going to close the debate prematurely, and, and not hear what the, finished debate. You don't want to close it too quickly, too early, but there is a point where if there's the majority or the two-thirds to call the question, so you close the debate and move on.
Chair has a great deal of discretion in those.
Yeah, the point there is that someone could call question and because they don't want to hear what somebody has to say, and that's where I don't think that's right if you're trying to run an agenda.
I'll research that.
So, okay, well, look, we're not going to solve it, but I think it's something to think about, and so let's put this in our discussion next month as just part of the committee updates or something. Okay. All right. Okay. Item number, thanks, Rick. Agenda topics for next meeting. We just had that one. Anybody else have anything burning or something they want to get an update on?
But I think two is Mike Chavez needs to report back on the Ped Bridge construction contract.
bridge to no- I mean the-
vendor. He needs to report back on the vendor, and if all the $1,133,000 goes to that vendor, or if some of that goes to the railroad. And then the second one is Robert's Rules.
Okay. Anybody have anything else burning? Carlos? Hang on, Tom.
Always Carlos here. Is Mike still here? I just wanted to congratulate the city staff, city engineering. There was an award that was presented to by the Colorado chapter of the American Public Works Association. The Woodman Continuous Flow intersection won a state award, and I just wanted to pass my congratulations and thanks to city staff for earning this award. It looks like a fairly significant achievement for city.
First time you go through that intersection, it blows your mind.
It's an award-winning intersection.
Yes, I hear.
So, congratulations to the city of Colorado Springs.
Thank you for bringing our
What
attention.
was the award, creativity
Tom?
in the light of common sense?
2008.
Little sidebar, those of you with cell phones, up on the mesa is a 100-foot monopine antenna going in beside our pretty water tower up there. A 100-foot tall pine tree looking thing. And it was for cell. We finally got permission to get a cell tower in the area.
So maybe Verizon will work now.
Maybe a lot of them will work now. It was always held up because Cheyenne Mountain was broadcasting military to Denver, right over the top of us, and we were screwing them up with cell towers. But we couldn't have a cell tower because it interfered. I don't know what changed, but anyhow, they just told all of us residents, with a 100-foot monopine, they call it.
Ann?
Now, I'm still kind of new, so this might not really be relevant, but you might like to know this. Yesterday, at the invitation of Mr. Gunning, I attended a meeting for the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments Water Quality Management Committee. Now, that mainly includes engineers, wastewater people, and so on. They have to update the Regional Water Quality Management Plan which was created in 2010, and this region includes El Paso, Teller, and Park counties, and addresses the needs for water quality and wastewater treatment. The procedure has changed, which may be good, so that the aim is to keep it simple, so that the plan will be useful. And the plan can be much shorter than was required years ago, and it goes to the state for approval, and the Environmental Protection Agency gets a courtesy copy. They don't really dictate, apparently, as much, which might be good because people here understand our problems better. Anyway, they went on and talked about how many wells and water delivery systems, it's very fragmented, and they were developing policy statements. The board of directors will eventually approve their final draft. And I was going to suggest that Reb might be better than me to go to those meetings because I think you're an engineer.
No, there's 3 or 4 of them in this crowd.
There might be, but they're going to meet again on October 2nd at 10 o'clock here. And I'm going to come, and it's an open meeting, and they do want people to come. Woodland Park didn't come. I mean, it's bigger than just PPRTA, as you know. And they were trying to set up so people could chime in on their computers, but it didn't work. So there were a few people here, and they're really serious about managing that. And Mr. Gunning was present and chimed in that all of this is so important, it even impacts our roads, of course, water.
Sure.
And so I just wanted you to know that, and I'm sure that anybody can come, and I'm trying to encourage people to come from Green Mountain Falls.
Okay.
So thank you for letting me say that.
No problem. I wanted, thank you for sharing that. I wanted just, for some of you don't know, the city does have that app that we're talking about, the roads thing. That is a great app. They do respond. I reported a street light that was, a sidewalk light that was coming apart, one of the street lamps downtown. And I got a call within about 3 days, and the guy was standing on the sidewalk, and I directed into what we were looking at. So they do respond to this stuff, and so it's a great app. You can include a picture with it. It gives the geo coordinates, and it's a super product, and it's easy to use.
The county has one also.
I was going to say,
the
county app is really, really good. I have used it for potholes and had them filled within 3 days of putting in a request. It's a great app.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, we'll send that app link out to Rick, and so he can forward it out to the hack. We have, ours is a customer engagement system. It includes not only roads, but also stuff for parks and some other things. So, and we're anticipating to expand that in the long term. So I'll make sure that Rick has that so he can send it out to all hack.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Anything else? So adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
So what you think of session 2?
It's our fault, not really theirs.